So welcome to the third seminar of the AI and Life Matters seminar series at the Institute for Advanced Study in Johannesburg under the directorship of Victoria J. Collis Butelezzi. My name is Anaïs Nony, and this specific session of the seminar is dedicated to what is AI doing to our brain, what is AI doing to our sense of cognitive capacity, to our attention, to our affective disponibilities, to our data bodies, as feminist scholars will say. And so I would like to come back to one text that I mentioned last 2 weeks ago, which is the article titled Artificial Intelligence and Consent, a Feminist Anti-Colonial Critique. And I think that there is really a lot to say on the question of what is the society we are tapping into when a legal framework as important as the notion of do I consent, do I authorize, do I give my permission, is now being automated under the disguise of automating procedures that embody values of speed, of functionality, of scale, without the apparatus of transparency, and more than transparency, I prefer to talk about consent. I think it's a very strong article that I really encourage everyone to read, because we are going to talk about digital systems that are making automated decisions, and we are going to ask ourselves what this automated decision making is doing to our sense of cognition. But if AI systems are making automated decisions, not only in our houses, but also in governments, the question goes beyond privacy concerns and affect our capacity to be agent of our life, whether it's a small task of life, such as finding the next route to reach a point, or having access to welfare, social support, or having access to a grant if we want to go to school and if we need to go to school. So I think this notion of consent is really at the core of also that theme of today's seminar, which is what is our online brain becoming next, now that AI tools are supplementing the devices we already use. So I want to be very clear about the fact that AI, what is now usually referred to as AI, is mostly generative AI, the generation of text, the production of text, the production of images, the productions of songs, but AI has been implemented since digital technologies arrived, in a sense. So let's not conflate or separate either. Let's really think about it in terms of an accumulation of complexities in which we are now kind of like trapped, or in which we are now forced to think. So I also would like to thank one of the participants of the seminar, whose name is Gary Augusto, because Gary emailed me and sent me this very, very encouraging email, very heart-warming email, and also asked if moving forward we could also include more references from different parts of the world. So that's, I don't always mention, but for instance, the two scholars of this artificial intelligence and consent paper are based in Argentina. When I refer to Timnit Gebru and Alex Hanna, they also come from a non-localized research network, but are situated within Eastern African legacy of concerns and political activism. So I apologize if I am not always situating, but more than that, her comment made me think of the fact that I have inherited from my mentor a set of questions. My mentor was Bernard Stiegler, so I inherited a set of questions, and now I am at a moment in my intellectual life where part of the dance is also to honor that legacy and also to find room and freedom to make this legacy be also twisted by the reading of very different geographies and localities and concerns. So thank you to Gary for that. So one question that might be activating our conversation today could be formulated like that. Is technology creating cognitive shortcuts that reduce the need for deep thinking? Meaning that is relying on AI for decision-making a way to reduce engagement in critical processes? So when I'm saying what is AI doing to our brain, I really I'm fascinated by the way in which technology is now requiring us to think in a radical transdisciplinary way, where disciplines such as psychology, such as ethnography, such as sociology, such as mathematics, such as economy, come together. Because the question that I just asked is relying on AI for decision making under what we could call a platform capitalism, or communicative capitalism, like Jody Dean says, is relying on AI for decision making a way to reduce engagement in critical processes? That's also a question of political economy, because if we remove if we remove the capacity for critical thinking, then AI technology is now inviting new forms of vulnerabilities. And so what is the future of individual and collective knowledge if the tools we use, if the tool we are invited to use is also inviting us in return to delegate cognitive tasks? So as I just said, and hi Zanele, as I just said, it's what is AI doing to our brain is asking us in a very radical transdisciplinary way to address what is consent, but it also what is the possibility of agency if cognitive tasks are being, reduced. And so it is. So we are tapping into a question that has been formulated, that could be formulated in such a way. In the 70s, 80s, 90s, a lot of theory has been developed around that notion of biopower, of biopolitics, a politics that has the capacity to reagence life matters to the point that it's no longer really the decision, like the king who has the right of death or life for this population, but what Michel Foucault will call a biopower, where it's more how state institution, the school, the prison, the hospital, how health, how death is managed, that is a form of discipline of life. So it's no longer the ruling of the monarch that has the decision that has the capacity to decide who is able to live or die, but a biopower of disciplining the life of the governed. And that biopower was very much inscribed in the body. That's why we talk about body politics, biopolitics. But as the development of digital technologies, the immaterial dimension of the labor of digital technology started to increase, and that the cognitive investment started to also increase, then we started to talk about neuropower, or we started to talk about psychopower, how the environment outside of those state institutions started to also discipline, and maybe more than discipline, but control the life of the mind. And so it's more like the capture of the life of the mind. That's why we talked about the attention economy. While during biopower, biopolitic, you had a clear distinction between you work at the factory and your time is regimented. So outside of the factory, you are consuming pleasure time, whatever, in order to feel more productive when you're back at the factory. Now there is this modulation, this control of your life within the factory, outside of the factory, or what Jonathan Crary said, the assault of sleep, where capitalism is really also trying to just take as much as it can, even from the very resources that you need to regenerate, which is also the capacity to sleep. So we talk about this psychopower, this power on our cognitive capacity, the fact that our attention is captured by those platforms for the sake of creating value. And that capture also has a modality of disaffecting people. And the disaffection of people by the constant stimulus of information has been more than frightening, given what has been happening around the genocide in the Palestinian territory of Gaza. The fact that there was such a level of information overload, but information that did not lead to action for the most part. So that's another ethical question of the question of information technology, and I might do an entire session on the question of ethics in information systems. So just quickly to wrap up the introduction, what this neuropower is asking us to ponder is, in which regime of truth are we now operating? What is the digital regime of truth when the market is driven information for the sake of attention capture, for the sake of a neuropower? So that's a very important question, truth. What is a fact? What is the truth in a hyper-industrial society where we are now more relying than ever on the external validation of our information that are being produced by machines. So, any question on that? Hi, Victoria. Hi, Zanele. It's a very intimate session today, and I'm just so happy to see you join.
Hello.
Hello. Are we good? Or any question on that? Okay. So I just for Zanele and Victoria, I just gave a short introduction on how we have morphed into a regime of power where the question of the biopolitics is now morphing into a neurocognitive power where AI has a role in it, where AI might be an instrument for not only the capture of our attention in an economy where our attention is being more and more valued onto capitalist platforms such as Meta, such as Facebook. I mean, Facebook, it's the same, TikTok and all of that. But what is technology creating? Is technology creating cognitive shortcuts that reduce the need for deep thinking? That's our question today. So I'm going to shift to a few articles that I found very important, that I come from different disciplines. So psychiatry, psychology, neurosciences, and a few others, business management. Yeah, so that's also to prove the point of what I was saying, that this technology is radically asking us to do transdisciplinary research if we want to address together questions around the power of AI on LifeMatters. So I'm gonna do a little bit of back. Going a bit before what is being used as AI. So we're going to talk about what has been named the online brain. What is our brain becoming in a moment where we spend so much of our time on the internet? So what has been named the online brain, or what also has been called the Google effect. I will talk a bit about that now, and then we'll shift more specifically to AI. So as we talked about in this seminar, the internet really is one of the most widespread and rapidly adopted technology in the history of humanity. And that is really concerning, because in less than 40 years, the penetration rate of the internet, digital technologies, and the smartphone is exceeding the capacity to provide for what is essential to human life, such as, for instance, when I made the parallel between access to sanitation and access to mobile phones. So we are at a very, very like a symptom where more than two-thirds of the world population have access to the internet, and more than 1 billion and 300 million people are still lacking access to safe drinking water at home. So having a smartphone, it might not be a good indicator anymore of the fact that someone is indeed able to be provided the necessary source for the continuation of its life, which is having access to drinkable water. So the internet, a technology that is really disrupting most sectors of society, including education, medicine, the law, economy. But today we are very much interested in what is this online brain doing to our attentional capacities, our capacity to pay attention. What is this online brain doing to our memory processes, our capacity to retain information? And what is this technology doing to our social cognition, to our capacity to be together in a social context that is really beneficial to the life of our mind, to the free life of our thinking, of our critical but also analytical, creative agency of our mind. So these three pillars: attentional capacities, memory processes, social cognition. So the internet was really thought through and created as a new channel for connection, information, communication. What is now of concern is that it is inviting us to perform tasks, and I will be talking about multitasking in a minute, that has a drastic impact on our neuroplasticity. And now we have the capacity to create evidence on how that constant multitasking through screen alter these three pillars, that is attention, memory, and social cognition. So in the history of humanity, if this is one of the technologies that is the mostly disruptive technology, the way we can maybe have a sense of how much impact that technology is having is maybe in that part of our body, which is the brain. And I'm saying that not to reduce us to the brain, but maybe to activate a sense of urgency that by being in a constant technologically driven and now AI driven environment, it is our brain that is evolving way faster than we could ever thought of. And something that I've said in the seminar last week is that we have survived as a species thanks to the capacity we had to transmit knowledge from one generation to the other. That is our cognitive capital. Our cognitive capital in forms of skill sets made us develop. And that is systematically being reduced to almost nothing in the society of hyper-industrial technologies. If you want me to recall what is a hyper-industrial technology, I can. I like to think in terms of different comparison to get a bit of a grasp of what is happening to our cognitive capacities and how important that question of cognitive capacity is, and what are the new vulnerabilities that it's creating if we delegate to technologies too much. In the US, in 2019, 95% of teenagers had a smartphone, and 45 are online almost all the time. Meaning that their life is now regulated by an external source that is digitally run, mostly by private companies. And so it gives a sense of how pervasive in the intimacy of the life of this population. In South Africa, where the population between 15 years old and 35 years old has an unemployment rate of 47%. In that country, people spend on average 9 hours and 37 minutes on the internet. So if we thought, well, we are talking about the United States, if we look at the global South, that might be different. What we are seeing is that there is a trend for an increase time online where your attention is constantly captured and broken down into multitasking effects that has a huge detriment to your capacity to retain information. A study shows that on the internet, people switch between windows almost on average every 19 seconds. And at the beginning, I was like, no, this is not possible. Like 19 seconds, what are we doing? What are we doing? But when I'm also catching myself opening different hyperlinks and clicking, I start to read something. Well, 19 seconds later, I'm very much somewhere else trying to open something else. And it's true that I found myself, I have to catch myself. I have to be disciplined. Otherwise, it's too tempting, because this study also shows that 70% of all on-screen content is being viewed for less than 1 minute. So our attention, prior to the emergence of AI, was already fractured, completely fractured in pieces. Our capacity to focus, whether it's on the pages of a book, on the person that I have in front of me, or on that article I need to read for my work, is being so fractured that it has created the perfect terrain, the perfect milieu, the perfect environment for the cognitive offloading that AI is inviting us to perform. And that's where, in order to understand our online brain with AI, we have to understand how the internet has prepared us to constantly get distracted. So, hi, Kai. Oh my goodness, this is all my very dear colleagues and people now. I am feeling so glad. Hi, Kai, for coming. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, I was just saying that in order to understand what is AI doing to our brain, which is the question of today's seminar, and whether technology is creating cognitive shortcuts that are reducing the need for deep thinking, we have to understand that the internet has created an environment where our attention is constantly being disputed by different stimuli on which we perform constantly multitasking. And that has a huge toll on our capacity to, one, attentional capacity, memory processes, and social cognition. Any question? Oh, okay. So there was like a big effort in the literature, in psychology, in psychiatry, in neurosciences, to try to prove that multitasking was actually quite great for the cognitive abilities. And one object was the use of video games. The use of video games, certain video games where you had to collaborate with people on a specific task in order to kind of converge with a limited time, and that has been used as like a flame to say, multitasking is actually keeping us mostly engaged and mostly able to develop cognitive capacities. Now we have over 25 years of data and evidence to show that multitasking is soliciting the brain at such a level that is preventing a deeper level of cognition. So it's as if you're constantly trying to seek information, but you're never implementing it on a deeper level of where you are gonna process that information, choose to retain that information, interpret that information for your own experience. So that's what the neuroscientist Marianne Wolf talked about, the dying of deep thinking, of our almost incapacity to engage in deep reading, how difficult it is to stay focused on that. So that was a bit of the, a bit of the introduction. Yeah. So one question we could ask ourselves is what are the reasons people use the internet so much? And by the internet, mostly that phone, because now mobile phone is being used to have access to the internet much more than any other forms of screen, whether it's computer or tablet. So people usually use their smartphone for entertainment or to relieve stress. And that I found very interesting because we consciously often say, I use my phone to do X and this and that and this, and we have very good reason. We have like the most amazing reason. I need to connect, I need to do that, I use it for my work. The phone is, but when you really break down the time you spend on your smartphone and you compare it to the action that you use your phone to do this action, there is a real gap. And that gap has been interestingly questioned, and I think it's one of the very important questions, that we are not all vulnerable at the same way in terms of the phone. Zanelli. I feel that AI keeps me in a constant loop where my attention is always all over the place. So I generally keep scrolling without thinking. After a while, it gets harder to focus, think deeply, and even feel present. So I can't pay attention fully in any context, even when I try hard to focus. I get easily distracted. So I can relate. Thank you so much, Zanelli. Thank you so much, because this is like a testimony that is all over the document I am, relying on to give a warning signal. What is really great about our wonderful organ of the brain is neuroplasticity. So wherever you feel at now, that can really be we can retrieve a sense of agency, a sense of calm, a sense of focus, and a sense also of hello, Sandile, and a sense of stress-free. So welcome, Sandile. We were talking about the use of smartphone, and Zanelli shared a testimony on how AI is constantly keeping us in a loop where our attention is captured, and that has detrimental consequences on our attentional capacities and our capacity to process information. I like to say something that is quite of an anecdote, but I found it very perplexing when I came across that. The fact that technostress, so a disease that has been called a disease of adaptation, caused by an inability to cope with the new computer technology in a healthy manner, was coined in 1984. So that notion of being so surpassed by the speed at which technology was advancing and the way in which, I mean, that's very 80s, 70s, 80s to call it a disease. So we might not want to reproduce that from that vocabulary, but techno stress is not a new phenomenon to AI, but it is, as I said earlier, an accumulative process where our sense of agency around the technologies that we are using are actually reinforcing a form of stress. So compulsive smartphone usage elevates user stress for both psychological and biological reasons. And I found that very important. I'm going to unpack. There are a couple of reasons why the use of smartphone can elevate stress. So it can yield immediate gratification. That's why we say I am in a constant loop, because the short videos, the very entertaining short formats, the likes, the systems of gratification keeps us in a loop, and we really crave more. I mean, it really changes the dopamine system of your brain. But it also comes with a diminished sense of volitional control and induced persistent activity, meaning that compulsive usage of technology, internet-based technology on the phone, is parallel to a decrease of action capacity to invest in projects, whether it's a short-term project, long-term projects. And that is fascinating, because the more time you spend online feeling so caught up in a loop that is quite entertaining, I mean, it's very seducing, it is what we call irresistible. I mean, that's why we have people like Gilles, who is working on tweaking the algorithm so we don't keep they don't keep us hooked, but they, by design, they are made to be by design so disruptive of our capacity to pay attention to things that might be more fulfilling in the long term. So there is a psychological distress, but there is also the way in which smartphones may affect biological systems by changing the antioxidant defense systems of human tissues, leading to oxidative stress. So compulsive smartphone usage elevates user stress, both on a psychological and biological level. And that's why I'm situating the question of what is AI doing to our brain today, because it is both a question of psychology, but also a question of biology. So technostress in that context is a phenomenon of end users experiencing stress due to the information and communication overload. So what is important is that, again, we come with very different variables to this exposure to technology. We have different psychological traits. We have different gender, racial, class, abilities differences that makes us exposed to these technologies in very different ways as well. And so while we can question the trend, what is important is, again, to repeat myself, that we need radical interdisciplinary research to understand what is the pocket of freedom we can create, that is really helping different people in different situation and different location. Any question? So there is one study that I so that's the question of the dark side of the smartphone usage, and the question of techno stress is from that I discussed is from an article in Computers in Human Behavior by the team of researchers from the National Sun Yat-sen University in Taiwan. So I'll share in the email all of this references. So one team of researchers in China, from the Department of Psychology in China, but also the Department of Psychology in the London Metropolitan University, and the Department of Physics. I mean, very different, a team of researchers. They try to understand what is internet search doing to our capacity to process information. Because they wanted to try to see concretely with image technology, MRI, if there is a real palpable evidence of the alteration of the brain by the use of the internet. So again, they tap into that study, building on former research, and one of which is a very well-known research that is called the Google effect, that has proven that when we are on the internet looking for information on Google, it is actually less the information we are going to retain. Actually, we are most likely never going to be able to retain the information itself, but we're going to retain the pathways. Like you took your phone, you went on Google, you wrote down your keywords, and boom, you look through the first few suggestions, and you find the information, and quickly you use that information. But the Google effect is showing that you are not going to retain the information itself. Instead, you are going to retain where is this information stored. So we have a huge displacement here between a capacity to selectively retain for attentional purposes an information that might be useful in the future, which really is the creation of experience, to I am gonna know better where to get that information, whatever information. Google has it for me. So that's also what we call the brain in your pocket, using the internet as an external brain, that is sitting here with storage memory, infinite storage memory, which makes you not responsible anymore to retain the information you were looking for. So the team that I mentioned a few minutes ago, they build on that study, the Sparrow study from 2011 and the Carr research, Nicholas Carr research from 2010, and they realize that the people using internet search as a tool to access new information showed lower brain activation, meaning that there is an alteration of what they name the intra and inter-regional synchronization in the temporal gyrus. So in the region that is usually being activated when you are reading a complex text, and where you are not going to be given the information in such a quick manner, where your capacity to access the information depend on your interpretation of the text or your understanding of the text. So, or the understanding of any complex problems, that's and so what they've realized, what they were able to show is that what is increasingly being unraveled is that the more you are exposed to quick information on the search engine, the less you are activating brain zones in your brain that are necessary for the functional connectivity of deep seeking. Victoria, this work with us. Typically, we hear more about the psychology of AI usage and its implication. I appreciate the way in which helping us to understand that there are biological effects in terms of the structure of our brain, nervous systems, and bodies. Yes, I mean, thank you so much, Victoria, because right now what we hear a lot in the AI. Well, thank you so much, Victoria. I'm trying to respond to your comment. What we hear a lot about AI at the moment is the way in which it is maybe recreating a new form of intimacy, because there are people using it as a assistant, as a companion, as a therapist, as as a friend, as a best friend. So a very psychology oriented form of users. But to me, these are just symptoms of the fact that what is at the core is how we delegate decision making onto those platforms. Yes, they can become a best friend. If each time you need to have an answer on your question, you delegate your decision to that best friend, or that this is becoming a new assistant. I mean, I am all for technologies that help where there is a need, but not a disguise of what is actually happening in terms of our social relationship and our cognitive capacities. Because the more you use AI, generative AI, like ChatGPT or DeepSeek or Le Chat Mistral, I mean, all of those generative AI companions that become companions that are like, we use it in an automated way. If you use it to accelerate tasks that you already know very well, that is something of a different challenge than using it to constantly rely on it to have information about what it is you should do, or what it is you should eat, or what it is that you should say to someone that you might like. I mean, it is becoming a function where people who have the less insurance, the less confidence, um, are delegating their decision making to those tools. And that's why it's a question of class. That's why it's a question um, of who is benefiting when an entire population is now delegating their life decision, small or big, onto AI. We make it I don't, but there is a big hype around the fact that AI is being used to create new forms of intimacy that might have dangerous aspects. Of course, there are dangerous aspects, but the core of that is how we are creating an environment where first our attention has been completely fragmented, where our techno stress is both biological and psychological, and now where our decision to be agent of our own life is being delegated to technologies that we have no access to change or to modulate or to adapt or to create differently. I mean, we can create differently. So thank you, Victoria, for that question. Any question? I don't know what time is it. Okay. Okay. I am gonna do two more. Okay. I think if you want me to talk more about multitasking and hyperactivity, I'm happy to. We can maybe do that if you want to. I'm just thinking about the time, and I've been talking for a long time. I just want to talk about one text from Canada, from an article in the Computers in Human Behavior journal, from a team of researchers based in Canada, which is called The Brain in Your Pocket: Evidence that smartphones are used to supplant thinking. So one of the big shift is how technological tools used to be supplement. We used to use that as supplement. Because, for instance, you use a tool because you're not strong enough, and so you supplement your strengths with a tool, and that tool is just used as a supplement. It supplements your capacity. You use it. You use a post-it where you write a few notes, and you supplement your capacity for memory onto that post-it, which you might craft the way you want. Some people use post-it with color coding. I mean, you make it your own, and that's a technique of supplementing your potential memory overload at that moment with a technique of your own. When we talk about supplanting, we are no longer about supplementing. When we talk about supplant thinking, it's how technology replaces your capacity for thinking. So that's a huge, to me, it's one of the big political question of AI, is how now we have evidence that the technological environment where we spend most of our life, I mean, the ones who are who are in hyper-industrial societies, who are supposed to be in charge of decision making, are now exposed to tools that are supplementing and more than supplementing, supplanting thinking. And I think that's a political question, and I don't have the answer. I keep saying we need teams of interdisciplinary scholars to address this question. So last time I talked about the externalization of the brain onto technical supplement. But what I like about this article is that it says something that we are not really saying, which is something that in psychology they call cognitive measures, meaning that human, most of the time, if we can not do deep thinking or deep cognitive task, we are not going to do it. By default, we are built to try the easy path, to just to avoid costly analytic thought in favor of effortless intuitive processing. We are built in a way that, and there is a lot of hello. There is a lot of literature on that now. There is a lot of literature on showing that human might have a tendency to adopt easy path towards information than to dive into full cognitive task. And that's fair, that's totally fair. But I think it's important to acknowledge that AI might be reinforcing a tendency that we have, which is to choose effortless cognitive task over effortful cognitive thinking. And so we have all very different cognitive styles. I am absolutely not trained in this to discuss it in depth. There is a question by Kai. Given the addictive nature of AI, can you offer strategies that we can use to either wean ourselves or manage the amount of time that we use the tool? Thank you so much, Kai. So I think just based on what I said about the fact that it's inherent to the, human, let's say human nature, even though I don't believe that there is one, there are many, but there is a tendency to go to the easy path in terms of cognitive effort. Then with AI technology, you have to ask yourself, what is it that I am using it for? And what is it that I'm using it for in terms of supplementing a strength, a skill, something I already know how to do, something I might need, a bit of extra help? Or am I using it to supplement, replace, discharge my cognitive load onto the machine? I think that having education, we need an education on AI tools. I mean, this is very, very urgent. Because at the moment, what we are seeing is that we are blindly adopting those technology as if they are not provoking changes, both on the psychological and biological aspect of ourselves. So, I mean, just by changing the parameter of your screen, and I and for people who know me, they know that I always say, just turn your screen of your phone onto grayscale. Because if you put your phone onto grayscale, then instantly it's no longer that attractive for your brain, because there is not that much visual stimulus. So even an additive, let's say you like to scroll through YouTube shorts, or if it's TikTok, or if it's Instagram, uh, well, if your screen is on grayscale, that kills it completely. That's like one of the most useful perimeter tweak that you can make. I will say for AI, in terms of using it for, it depends if it's for your work, if it's for your personal life. Is AI becoming something that you feel like you cannot live without? I mean, in France, they did a survey, and I don't know, I don't remember if it's half of the people saying that they use internet every day, and they feel like after one day of not using it, they feel that they crave it. Because we crave, that's why we are multitasking. We are being wired to always seek the satisfaction of a new stimulus, of a new information, as if we do not get enough. So instead of investing in the pleasure of what it would mean to deeply think for oneself, and learn from the process, which is the process fundamental to experience, because your experience is built by the way you are gonna attentionally engaged in your life, daily life, your week, a month. If all our brains are being wired synchronously to the same TikTok videos, then it's a cognitive capital of our experience that is being synchronized onto one specific linear trajectory that makes us extremely vulnerable to manipulation. That's another aspect of the consequences of usage of internet. So, Kai, one question is to ask yourself: are you using AI for divertissement, mince, entertainment? Are you using AI for professional, productivity? Are you using AI for cognitive offloading? Meaning, oh my God, that task I don't want to do. I'm going to just take that task, put it in the machine, give the prompt, tweak the prompt, take the thing, tweak it a bit, and send it. Because that is the cognitive offloading process that is being performed. So as you see last week, 2 weeks ago, I mentioned the fact that we are changing the controlling dimension of biopower, biopolitic, onto a neuropsycho power, because we are no longer in an environment where tools and devices are being created to supplement our workforce, our memory capacity, our communicative capacities, or what, but we are morphing into a supplanting, a discharge. And that makes people extremely vulnerable to manipulation. Remember that on Twitter, a false information is going to spread 6 times faster than a truth fact. So the engine are also made to promote that. So to go back to the first question of, is technology creating cognitive shortcuts through the disruption of our attention, the constant multitasking that is eroding our capacity for deep thinking? Is it creating cognitive shortcuts that reduce the need for deep thinking? Absolutely. But this is not now. That is quite dangerous. We have to think in 20 years, in 40 years, in 60 years. Is reading and writing, does it have a future? And if so, why? Do we have to hold on that? I don't know, but what do we hold on to, and what do we create anew for in 20 years, in 40 years, in 60 years, given the political and climate condition in which we live? Sandile, I am interested in how AI influences our cognitive capacity to connect to the nature around us and process subtle emotions that could be triggered by organic thinking faculties, as opposed to generated information processing the cognitive space, a threat or an opportunity brought by AI innovation. I mean, it's really, I mean, the literature on the capacity to connect to the environment. I think this is how, I mean, I am thankful for your question, because I think that's how I started this. And AI was not really a thing, but massively produced TV shows was already something. The literature on the impact of screen times on children, that's where I started, is so detrimental to their capacity to connect with others, to connect to themselves, to develop bodily cognitive understanding of themselves, of their environment. And so while AI can be such an interesting tool, there is an artist based in I'm not going to get her name. This is amazing. What she's doing is that she's using AI to produce synthetic images, so generated images of plants that has disappeared. So populating a catalog of plants that existed in Senegal that has disappeared, but that are where AI can be a source of cataloging and archiving with a creative vision for also having a new relationship to the environment that is not predatory, that is not about just using the nature for the sake of capture. So our capacity to connect to nature it starts with the very first capacity to pay attention, meaning that to pay attention and to connect we have to be able to pay attention in order to connect, and that's what we call the when attention, when, for instance, when two people pay attention to the same object, that the value of that object is strengthened. So for instance, if in a room 5 people are looking at the screen on a phone to show something, but none are watching the outside scenery where there is a beautiful natural landscape, then the content, the value we're gonna give is being captured by a device that is definitely not at that moment. It's not being designed to help us reconnect to natural environment. And a dear friend of mine, I mean, he's a research associate at JIAS, Mohammad Shabangu, is a very dear friend. And I remember a few years ago, he came to the mountains in the Pyrenees, and I will always remember, because he was shocked by the natural landscape. I mean, now nature is so far removed from our daily life of exposure to screen that we are now being almost in a state of shock if we are plunged in an environment that used to be not just a few generations before us, just like a regular to most people. So I don't want to make generality. I'm grateful for your question. I mean, the question of connecting to nature is definitely something that is at the core of the AI and Life Matters. So yeah, thank you. Yeah, Asani. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for this. I've been thinking about some of what you had said in the opening about the biopolitical, and I think I've been thinking a lot about necropolitics in relation to AI and the kind of like cognitive offloading that has been able to happen in the creation of systems that target certain people for their, political affiliations or for the things that they think or what they're doing online or, these all these sorts of fears that we have right now living in the US, but also things that have actively already happened in, Gaza, for example. So I was curious if you had any thoughts on like necropolitics and AI and the kind of dehumanization, I guess, that it allows for when you decide that the algorithm is going to choose who is expendable versus having to make those decisions yourself.
Yes. Wow. So I wrote a book, and in that book there is one chapter, and it's on racialized technesis. And it took me more than 7 years to write this chapter. And in that chapter, what I'm trying to say is that what Gilmore calls premature death, which I found probably more interesting than necropolitics, but I will tell you why in a minute. I will try. That premature death goes hand in hand with what I've tried to call a programmed life, where more and more our life is being programmed, not only by state institutions, but also by corporate agendas that extend into the tools we use in our daily life. And so I don't want to minimize the importance of necropolitics, but to me, One way to answer that question, I will use another feminist. Her name is Elsa Dorlin, and her text I have already mentioned, but I found her book, Self-Defense, A Philosophy of Violence, extremely wonderful. I mean, such a brilliant piece. It's available in English. It has been translated. I think it's Verso or Polity, Verso that has published it. Self-Defense, A Philosophy of Violence. And she shows that more and more the story of people fight for freedom could be traced through the capacity that we have to arm ourselves for self-defense or not. So that question of self-defense right now, I think, is super urgent, because if we do not self-defense now, how are we going to just defend anything soon? So she traces through a historiography, political philosophical historiography of who gets to have access to weapon for self-defense, and what are the tools that the people made disarmed. Because at some point in the Black Code, a Black person could not even hold a pen. They could not be found with a pen. So a pen was already seen as a weapon. So I think it's important that we retrace that long genealogy who has the capacity to arm ourselves. And that's why I'm talking about cognitive offloading, because I feel like it's such a ripoff. I mean, this is really, really dangerous. And so the programming of people's life for the sake of prematuring death, of causing the premature death, whether it's on the question of health, where technology plays a big role, whether it's a question of education, where technology plays a big role, or climate, I mean, or politics. I have tried to show that there is a racialized dimension to technesis, and that was against, I mean, it's not against, but it was to work with the limit of the theoretical apparatus that I inherited, where there was this assumption that a technology is by default neutral, and that we really understand the political dimension of a technology just when we use it. And I totally disagree. I mean, there are technologies that were used and invented to assert domination. I mean, by default, the cephalometer technology that was created in colonial time to measure the perimeter of the skull as a way to assert a certain hierarchy between people. It's a proof that a technology is by design and by deployment and by usage responsible, and that there is someone responsible in the implementation of all those different aspects. So the necropolitics, yeah, I think Elsa Dorlin and Ruth Gilmore offer a way to think what is in between the life and death, because it's not just the production of death, it's the production of a certain programmed life that will necessarily lead to premature death, but that's in the in-between where the politic is being performed. So yeah, I'm just trying to answer your
No,
great
thank you for
question.
that. Yeah.
Anyone? Is it something you're working on, Asani, right now?
No. There was a question that I had that's related to something that I am working on, but that was just thinking along the lines when you were talking about biopower, the first thing, of course, that comes up is kind of the idea of membe and necropower and all these sorts of things. So it was, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for your question. Any other question? So maybe to try to respond to Kai. Cultivating a focus task as opposed to multitasking time. That is probably a way to relieve the hold that AI technology can have. And so to me, that's one of the way in which there is a need for education around AI. So we don't just adopt that technology without an understanding of what it is we want the technology to be used for. Because again, I mean, that's a saying, but if it's free, it's more likely that you are being the product of some marketing war. So you know, if you're using a tool that is so easy, that is helping you to do so many things, and that you feel that you're getting very attached, addicted to it, then it's more likely that this technology is not going to help in the long run. It might fix your your need for productivity at that moment, but it's not gonna be without deep psychological and biological alterations. And that's something there is still a lot to work on. But as I said in the beginning of the seminar, in the first session of the seminar, because there is a colonial endurance in the new technologies that are being deployed, then there is also a warning that if we do not carefully craft the tools that we want to use to uplift our community, then it's more likely that they are master's tools, to use the word of Audre Lorde. And we cannot dismantle that technological system with the tools that are handed to us in a such a seamlessly way. So do not be lured by the glowing, seductive dimension of AI technology as it is at the moment. but I'm not at all certain that in a few years we're going to see a lot of AI guerrilla systems. It's possible that there will potentially be people invested in creating much safer network of communication. It's already the case. It's just that at the moment we haven't fully embraced the reality of what UN rapporteur called a dystopia, a warfare AI-driven dystopia. And that was coined in 2019. So we are already very much in it. And for a long time, a lot of people were telling me, but look at China, what they have done with the credit system, where you are born with a certain amount of point. And if you do good, your points raise. And if you do bad, your points decrease, to the point that if you decrease too much, you don't have access to a loan, you don't have access to university, you don't have access to a passport. And not only that, but the people you are in connection with, they're going to affect your number, your rated social system, as they call it. We are in it mostly everywhere. So maybe not officially as in a system where we have a certain amount of point, but I think not forgetting what makes us people engaged in a path for freedom, equalities, fair redistribution of wealth, repair, whether it's emotional, psychological, land, ecology, repair. That are skills that are completely not promoted by AI. So, again, Kai, what one of the advice is, do not forget what is the trajectory you want to be involved in, not the shortcuts, the cognitive shortcuts that are being promoted. Any final thoughts, remark?
I was curious,
Yes.
again, thinking back to your opening, when you started asking questions about like whose truth are we operating in, what is fact, what is truth under a regime of psychopower. I'm curious if you could expand it, because it was a quick touch, and that is related to something I'm working on. So I'm really curious to hear your thoughts about that. Or like a bit more expansion on, how AI is able to kind of assist in the manufacturing of a certain truth or construction of a certain reality.
Yes, there was a dialogue between Bernard Stiegler and a philosopher of law, Antoinette Rouvroy, that I co-translated with a friend of mine, and it's called the Digital Regime of Truth. And then there is another part of the title which I've forgotten. It was published in 2017. For truth to matter, it has to hold significant, signs, where we can recognize that there is a historical integrity, material integrity, that that it has significant anchoring, let's say. That's why truth is so malleable, because what is going to matter and be anchored is going to shift depending on the set of belief, the symbolic order in which we are operating, and all of that. What is digital technology offering under the capitalist mode of communication in which we are mostly in, is that layer of signification, for instance, a linguistic signification where a word in one language might resonate with another word in another language, where some data in one country might very well have a material signification. In the digital, that signification might be resumed to a line of code that is between 0 and 1, which is not legible outside of a machine, most likely to another machine, except if you are an expert who is able to read coding and who is able to unpack the complexity of the model in which that line is being produced. So it's interesting because I don't think it's a simulacrum of the reality. It's not that is as if the digital regime of truth is a simulacrum, meaning a false representation of what is. It really is just another form of producing what this woman has called a signification, like signification that exceed the realm of the real. And so the digital regime of truth is no longer interpreted with the same tools that we interpret the world in which we might not be in agreement, but we have still the capacity to converse or to have a conversation, or we might not have a consensus, but we have the possibility of a dissensus, with the possibility to disagree. With a digital regime of truth, it's difficult to have any grasp on the signification of a language mostly made by machine for machines to use. But that is just a parallel world. It has a feedback loop, what Mark Hensel called a prehensivity, in the sense that it has a capacity to operate in what Boris Groys called a submedial, under the medial, under our sensory motor capacity. So while signification and the real and the possibility of gathering truth around the real was made of signification in which we could invest ourselves through interpretation, now we are in a regime that has a capacity to feed back into our world, but with whom we have so little agency to actually partake into the shaping of that regime of truth, if that makes sense. But this article between I can share it if you want. It's online. It's super easy to find, and I found the first few pages quite interesting on that question. I mean, it's a long interview that they did, so it's a long article. But yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for your questions. Any last comments? Are we good for this session? Okay, thank you. I got a little thumb up. We're good. Yeah, next time I will certainly do something on ethics. Yeah. Yes. What Paolo Vignola and Sara Baranzoni called AI and ethics. Not the ethics of AI, but I'm still learning from them. They are two philosophers that I really admire a lot. And so, yeah, next time I will try to present that. Thank you for attending, and talk to you soon. Bye, Kai. Bye,
Thank you,
everyone.
Dr. Anaïs. Have a good evening. Bye.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Gilles.